FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
We're back on the Financial Survival Network. This is Kerry Lutz. And, well, we've got Martin Armstrong on to talk about the stock market, where the world economy is headed, and what about the dollar. Martin, welcome back.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Always a pleasure. You know that. So, stock market. Everybody is all in a tizzy. It's going to crash, any day now, correction, and basically alternatives. Where do you put your money? And there aren't any. And just, again, your take on it, you've been saying, we talked back when the market was 15,000 and you keep saying it's going higher and higher. And hey, I just wanted to touch base with you and find out, have you changed your views at all?
No, it's been pressing higher on a steady, methodical basis. So it's not in one of these bubble type, blasting out to the top yet. We may yet see that, but short term, sure. We have a little bit of a high. You'll move back down a little bit, but honestly, when you look around the world and you just ask yourself, where would you put your money? I'm talking about major institutions now. The individual can go buy some gold or something. That's very nice, but institutions can't do that. And currencies, etc. What they don't understand about the dollar is that, yes, we have a large debt, 17 trillion, but that is depth to it. So you can park money there. If you're a pension fund or something, and you got $1 trillion, there is no place to go but the dollar. All right, this is why Swiss just cut a deal with China and, to try and start a trend. Because effectively, when you went to the euro, you eliminated all those other currencies, but you don't have a national debt. You have all these individual countries, and the credit ratings are completely different between each one. Greece, it might be euros, but it's still Greece versus Germany. So you can't really park a lot of money there, and fine, China will boom and eventually become the largest economy, but that's not now. So all these people that tend to hate the dollar, you have to just ask, okay, fine, what are you going to do? You're going to buy pesos from Mexico? You want to, buy yuan from China? How about rubles? Nobody wants to put serious money in this stuff. And so unfortunately, that becomes the dollar. And that is the way it's going to go. And we've been seeing the dollar pushing up against the euro because the ECB is effectively moving towards negative interest rates and looking to flood the market with euros because their taxes are so high that the average German pays more than 50% in taxes. That's the average person. So unemployment among youth in Europe is over 60%. Taxes are so high, nobody will even start a new business. And everybody in France is just bailed out. It's very nice to say, tax the rich. Well, they can leave. And this is exactly what they've done. You can rent absolute mansions in Paris for almost nothing because nobody will buy them. Properties collapse on the high end in France. And the French are all someplace else. They left the country. I was just in London, and I was in a restaurant, and everyone was speaking French. I was amazed. Thought I was in Paris.
Really?
But we're in a very serious situation here. And there has been, I can tell you, a secret deal cut by the central bank. And that is you're going to see U.S., you're going to see New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and Britain raise interest rates while Europe is going to be lowering interest rates. And they're hoping that will, send some capital back to Europe to maybe help the economy grow. But it's not going to work. The capital is coming here because at the same time, you've got a banking crisis in Europe that's just off the charts. And you have the IMF telling everybody, choreographing, the way to solve the banking crisis, we just have to confiscate, and they're saying 10% of everybody's accounts in Europe. Well, when they did it to Cyprus, it ended up closer to 50%. So honestly, a lot of people in Europe, I was just there a few weeks ago. It's like the number one question, where do I put my money? I got to get it out of the banks. and that's why real estate's been booming. They've been buying real estate. Europeans have been buying a lot of real estate in New York and Florida, and they're just trying to get off the grid. And so this is, the stock market will still push higher. You're going to see that developing. Real estate probably still into next year. The Chinese are buying all the high-end real estate. They're the biggest buyers of that. Canada has also announced that they're looking at a bail-in, so taking money from depositors' accounts. So what's happened? Canadians are now the number one buyer of property in the United States.
Really?
Not the top-end tickets, but as far as quantity is concerned, it's Canadian.
Didn't know that. Really?
So China has got the high end as far as ticket price is concerned. The quantity is actually Canada, and then third is Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting, but everybody's trying to get off the grid.
Yeah. So notice that not only are the Chinese buying the high-end properties, but the People's Bank of China is actually encouraging them to do it and allowing them to take out more than the $50,000 limit with these little loopholes that they open up, and then they get exposed, they close them down, and then they open them up again. What's with that?
Well, China is very interesting. I mean, as you know, we focus primarily on forecasting with the business cycles, etc. And in Western culture, people they're more linear thinking rather than cyclical. When you go to Asia, that's part of their religion. So China is much more in tune to cyclical activity, and I think that this is one of the reasons that they're booming dramatically from considering where they were in 1989, and just moving up, the chain here, so that they're going to do very well. But China moves with the cycle. We do not. Karl Marx and that line of thinking, which actually goes all the way up into Keynes, is all about, well, here's the business cycle. I don't like the way it functions, so let's do this to change it.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. I mean, you just had Stockman coming out, arguing against Greenspan, saying, oh, no, central bankers create all the booms. It's ridiculous, completely ridiculous. And the evidence doesn't even show that Stockman even understands what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, okay, fine. If lowering interest rates creates the bubble, then what happened in Japan for 23 years? It depends upon where the capital flows are moving, and do people have confidence in it? If you don't trust something, you're not going to do it.
Right.
And that's the bottom line. So, I mean, these people that hate the dollar and okay, fine. Where you want to put your pension in yuan or rubles?
Right. But central banks, maybe, they don't necessarily control the cycles, but they can do things that make the cycles worse, right? They can really...
I think largely the central bank, in all honesty, probably doesn't. What it does is it chases it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you actually did a correlation of the stock market and interest rates, you'll see the stock market actually rises with interest rates, and it declines with falling rates. It's exactly opposite of what a lot of people talk about.
Yeah.
But, I mean, interest rates peaked in 1929 at 6% and then fall to 1% during the Great Depression. It didn't save the market. And the same thing in Japan. So it's more than what just the central bank is doing with interest rates or something like that. And also people focus too much on them. We have a $17 trillion national debt. 70% of that is accumulative interest. All right. So even if you shut down the Federal Reserve, all right, you've got a Congress that never pays off anything at any time.
Oh, that's for sure.
All right. And what really happens in this propaganda war against the central banks is that the government feels that they can print whatever, borrow whatever they want. And it's the Fed's job to neutralize it. And the Fed can't neutralize the entire national debt. They can't. So, but it's a great sales job. Hey, it's not me, it's the Fed. No, it's Congress. All right. And you guys never, ever pay anything off. It's a giant Ponzi scheme where they just borrow year after year after year. I mean, why are you borrowing money? The act of borrowing implies you're going to pay something back, but you never do.
Yeah. Wouldn't we all love to be able to borrow, and never pay back, right?
Yeah. It's like going to the bank and saying, all right, fine. No, I want to borrow $10,000 this month. Okay, fine. Okay, here's the interest. No, you never have to pay us back. That's fine. The next month, I want another 10,000. Sure, no problem. I mean, how? Where's this end?
Yeah.
And that's our real problem is that too many people focus on the central bank and they're not focusing their attention on the big bucks, and that's basically Congress. I mean, we've got budgets now of $1 trillion a year.
Yeah.
And it's just, the entire bailout was $700 billion. I mean, we're running annual, $1 trillion, budgets here now. So it's crazy.
Yeah. So where does it end? Can we just do this forever here, Martin, and never have to pay the piper?
Historically, we have to go bust. Everybody does. Nobody's ever beat this cycle even once. So what happens is at some point, what I'm saying here is it's confidence. And what will turn it is that confidence. It's that you get to the point, and you simply say, no, okay, I don't want to buy anymore. Once that happens, then it starts to crash. So we're seeing little hints of it. China had an auction, couldn't sell everything. Russia had an auction, couldn't sell everything. U.S., there was some problem on a few auctions here and there. Greece, Spain, couldn't sell anything. ECB had to come in and take up the slack. So it's starting. And when you get to the point when they can't sell the debt, the system has to fall. And we're going to have to revise this thing. And honestly, nobody would have designed what we have today without being, honestly, seriously drunk. Because,
yeah,
it's just, who would ever design a system where you borrow every year and never pay anything back, ever? I mean, nobody with any kind of an accounting degree would do it, or even just know simple math. So it's just been a process of evolution, but nobody ever sat down and designed the monetary system that we have.
Yeah, you always talk about how they knew they were screwing up when they designed the euro, and they just said, oh, we'll fix it later. And, it's now we got the crashing euro, the euro that wants to blow apart.
It's a complete disaster over there. And what they're now saying is, well, to save the euro, all the countries have to give up their sovereignty and there should just be Brussels. So, that's what they wanted originally. But they never see the solution as them having to retreat or give back some power. The solution is always more power for them. And that's what it is. And so you look, in Germany, nobody will start a new business. The regulations, the amount of money, and the risk is astronomical. So everybody would rather work for a big company, and that's it. And the taxes are over 50% for the average person. So United States, it's a little under 30%. Europe is just a complete disaster, complete. And there's no solution here because it's got to crash and burn.
Right.
But they just constantly, every solution they come up with, we need more power to force this to happen. They take that, well, we need a little bit more power to force this to happen. And it just keeps going and going and going. There's never any reform. I mean, we have so many agencies. I think there were 7 agencies that approved the bonds that all blew up in 2007, the mortgage-backed security stuff.
Yeah.
7 agencies. And one says, well, did they approve it? Yeah, okay, well, if they did, then we will. That's it.
Yeah.
So you have 7 government-regulated what? And not a single one said there was anything wrong?
Mm-hmm.
We're better off with just one. That's it. We don't need 7
or none, because none of them are capable of actually critically judging the securities.
No,
right?
Most of them have zero experience in the financial industry, and our problem, honestly, in all the regulatory and prosecutorial type atmosphere, it should be reversed. In other words, they take kids coming out of school, they become a prosecutor or a regulator in SEC or whatever, and they take that job simply to try and make a name for themselves, and then hopefully get one of them big $1 million paying jobs on Wall Street.
Sure.
It should be the opposite way. It should be saying, okay, fine, you've been a lawyer for 50 years or 45 years. Your last 5 years, you should come into the government and run this. Now you have the experience, and we'll give you a pension for doing so.
Like Joe Kennedy.
Something,
Right. That's what Joe Kennedy did. He said, I swindled Wall Street. Now I'm going to reform it.
No, sometimes they tell you basically you got to, if you want to be, really protected, you got to hire a thief to catch a thief.
It's just like computer security, right? You want your system to be safe, hire a hacker to do your security.
Oh, absolutely. Because they at least know all the nooks and crannies and how to get in and out of stuff. And that's what you need. You don't need somebody that has to figure out how to do it.
Sure.
Meanwhile, you've been hacked and everything's pretty bad.
But Martin, if it's all a cycle, okay, and there's basically nothing that you can do to stop the cycle, can you at least do something to make the cycle not as bad? That's really the question.
I mean, actually, probably the answer to that is right in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
You have Joseph telling the Pharaoh there'll be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of drought.
Right.
Okay. So stockpile it up now, and then fine. You can't stop the drought, but you can make it to the point it's not as bad.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to go the opposite way and try to prevent the drought from even taking place. You can't do it.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that we live in a world that is very dynamic. Everything's connected.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Great Depression, honestly, the stock market crashed about 60% up to 1930, started rallying a little bit. Then what happened? 31, you ended up with a sovereign debt crisis. That takes it down. Then you end up with the Dust Bowl. Now, 40% of employment were farmers back then.
Right.
That's why unemployment went to 25%. So you can't pass a law and make it rain.
But they think they can, though. Our hapless legislature there thinks that they can, mandate the heavens to open up. I mean,
it's most of it's just such bogus stuff. I mean, like this global warming. I mean, all the data that's coming out. Now they're finally realizing. I think Washington State University came out and said, there's this cycle here we should be looking at.
Yeah.
Because the monitoring stations are permanent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very nice. I say, oh, gee, there's less ice here than there was before. True. Okay. However, what they fail to mention is that the North Pole is not constant. Mm-hmm. It moves.
Yeah.
By 2050, it will be actually in Russia.
Right.
So we're getting warmer weather here. When I was just in Europe, it was in the 70s instead of 90s over here.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the difference. The North Pole is moving that way, and there's actually more. There's now 1 million square kilometers more of ice than there was before, but it's in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
So now that some of this information is starting to come out, and they're going, "Oh, wait a minute! The monitoring stations don't move."
Yeah.
So that's very nice. That's like saying, well, it's not raining right here, but it might be pouring in the state next to you. But everything's dynamic. It moves. I mean, the sun is like your heart. It beats, and there's a 300-year cycle in that between maximum and minimum.
The sunspot cycle, which has a big impact on the heat cycle.
Sure,
and
props and things of this nature.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't realize what that sunspot cycle on the sun is that the poles actually flip every 11 years there.
Yeah.
We get it, but our cycle seems to be a bit longer. The poles flip maybe about once every 400,000 years.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think we're due or something.
Yeah, we're pushing the envelope here. But,
yeah. Yeah.
But that's what happens. But the North Pole does continue to move. Then all of a sudden it will just snap and maybe just jump. And, I mean, it has been on top of Hawaii and other places. They can tell where it has been because when volcanoes erupt, the lava, when it turns to rock, is magnetized.
Yes.
According to where the North Pole is, so you can actually tell where it's been. Yep,
exactly. Yeah. So these cycles, you can prepare for them, but you can't control them, is what it comes down to.
It's very complicated. A lot of it also involves weather as far as nature is concerned. And there have been plenty of studies also that people will recover faster in a bright painted, hospital room versus a dark one.
Hey.
Suicides are greater, when you further go north. They don't see the sun for 6 months.
Yeah, Alaska.
It gets very depressing to people. So,
hey, and I think the best was in times of peace, prepare for war. In times of war, prepare for peace. Right? I mean,
pretty much. Yeah, I think it's. You just have to realize that this is part of this. There's always a cycle to everything. So.
Yeah.
We're born, we live, and we die. It's the cycle.
Yeah. And cycle of plenty, and then followed by a cycle of scarcity. And, but I think like your work has proven that these cycles are much more regular than you might have ever believed, right?
It's like, the Earth is 365 days. I mean, there's a lot of things that are very, very regular, and science of chaos came largely when they were looking at weather data. They assumed it was just random, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, there's patterns here.
Yep.
And
we need to take a break, but when we return, more on cycles with Martin Armstrong.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Warning, you might live in a no-constitution zone. It's the shocking story you won't see on TV. Depending upon where you live in the United States, you may no longer have constitutional rights. Politicians are quietly squeezing the middle class to micromanage you and extract your wealth. Want to see how? Watch the free video at noconstitutionzone.com. Soon, you'll have the last laugh by using these cultural contraband tricks and profit like a king. That's noconstitutionzone.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
We're back on the Financial Survival Network, speaking of cycles with Martin Armstrong. And these cycles are so sublime, and yet they control so much of our lives, right?
Yes. I mean, it's to some degree, we are very much hardwired to a lot of things. We like to think that we're completely independent, but there have been some interesting studies over the years that show that we tend to be a bit more hardwired than we would like to admit. But you take like a herd of zebra. A lion approaches it. A zebra on the outside sees it. The zebra starts running. He sees the lion. The rest of the herd starts running. They don't know why, because he's running. And we are the same way. And like in 1987, in the investigation of that crash, it was very, very fascinating because they basically called dealer, managers and said, "Why did you sell?" He says, And the most interesting response was they didn't know. When they picked up the phone and they called the broker and said, why did the market go down? And they said, I have no idea. There was no fundamental news. Interest rates didn't change. Economic data was fine. It was all external. It had to do with capital flows. So then the fund manager has to make a decision. I don't know why this thing just went down. It might go down again tomorrow. What do you do to be conservative? I got to get out because I don't know what's happening. Whereas if the market goes down, say, oh, well, the Fed raised rates a quarter point today or whatever. Yeah, all right, fine. Okay, you can make a judgment call. Well, there'll probably be a knee-jerk reaction back up. I'll wait for that, because that's based upon experience. But when you have somebody says, I have no idea, there's no confidence, and then you panic. So this is what causes the rises in the markets in the fall, and why why it's not a bubble yet. Every investigation begins with somebody trying to find that mythical short player that came in and overpowered the market and forced it down. And every investigation since 1907, nobody's ever found anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because that's not what makes the market go down. It's that everybody's long, something comes out and scares them. It's that herd of zebra. It's going down. I better get out. Well, why? Well, I don't know, because it's going down. So it often isn't the fundamental that's even there. When the 87 crash fell, because of the lack of news, the rumors were everything from Reagan was just shot with a bullet dipped in cyanide to, Russia just invaded Europe, but all the news is blacked out. I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, the amount of the percentage of the decline matched the outrageousness of the rumors.
Yeah.
And the next day nothing was true, but it was like, what? Russia just invaded Europe. On the TV. But this is what happened. So, and there's a book I would recommend reading. It's called Obedience to Authority by Stanley Milgram. And very, very interesting. I mean, you put one person out on the street and he's just staring into the middle of the sky. Everybody walks by and says, he's crazy, just some lunatic. Put 5 people out there all staring into the sky and a crowd will form. So all stop and say, what are they looking at?
Mm-hmm.
One person, he's crazy. 5 people, must be something there.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. That's what I mean, where we tend to be a lot more hardwired than people suspect. And that's part of the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But we're never going to stop it because incorporated in it is everything.
Yeah.
From disease to weather to, crop cycles. Everything is there.
Yeah. Yep. So you have to figure out how to anticipate them, which obviously you've done quite well at. So how do you anticipate a cycle before it hits? It's
largely putting together all sorts of data. Everything we can get our hands on, we have in there. But also it's back testing. I mean, you can go to our site, ArmstrongEconomics.com, and you can see we put on charts we've built the largest database ever. I mean, we took all the monetary systems back to Rome, et cetera, largely just to answer a question. All right, how did Rome fall? Was it, like a 747 coming in with, nice steady decline until it lands? Or was it just a crash and burn and that was it? And surprisingly, what actually came out and using all the coins and the monetary system, it collapsed in 8.6 years.
Really?
And so, yes, Rome lasted 1,000 years, but when it fell really hard, and it takes place rapidly, and that's part of contagion, etc. When communism fell, it starts with Tiananmen Square, and then within 6 months you have the fall of the Berlin Wall, and then everyone said, we're attributing it, it's because of communications. Sorry, wrong. Rome overthrew its Tarquin king in 509, and within also a few months, what happens in Athens? Democracy is born. And it didn't take very long. A guy could hop on a boat and be in Athens from Rome in a matter less than a week. So it's simply because we know about something because of communications today that might be nice, but it doesn't manifest itself into an immediate event. It still takes people time to think about it and put it together.
There's like a digestion phase where it's got to sink in.
That's the cycle. It still takes so much amount of time, and what we saw in, effectively at that point, it was a contagion against monarchy, and what we saw in '89 was a contagion against basically authoritarian communism. We're now going through the same phase, and it's the collapse of the other part of Marxism, which is effectively our socialistic idea. Because not that you don't want to help somebody. The problem is that government is consuming way too much of everybody's income.
It's authoritarian democracy here, where
we don't even have a democracy.
Yeah, well,
we call it that, but it's
you know
a
what I'm saying. Yeah, whatever we have here, I'll call it.
People should know we could have a democracy today, and that would be that where you have a right to vote on everything.
Yeah,
and we could all do it from our cell phones or from computers.
Yeah.
Okay, and anybody that doesn't have that, they could go to the local library and do it.
They could get an Obama phone.
Yeah, so I mean, it's we can do that. What we have is a republic where we hire basically one of these guys to be a congressman, but then they're career politicians, and so it's them against us all the time.
Yeah, they could care less about us.
It doesn't matter if you're talking about Republican or Democrat. It's all the same.
One crime family or the other.
Yeah, that's basically all it is. I mean, you take John McCain; he voted for putting a sales tax on the internet.
Yeah,
and then to justify himself, well, I thought you're a Republican against taxes. Oh, well, the tax is really there. I'm just saying it should be collected.
Yeah,
you can make all the excuses you want. I mean, you're basically,
yeah,
it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's totally. So, but. Yeah, that's representative democracy, republic. So, yeah, it's
they don't represent us. It's always basically them against the rest of us. So it's whatever furthers the power of government. And they put on a good show, absolutely good show. You take the hearings of Barney Frank up there, and this is outrageous. Fail to mention that all his family members, he got jobs where? In Fannie Mae.
Yeah. And his friends, in quotes, and whatever. But, all of these guys and Dodd-Frank. I mean, they're the ones that created this mess, and then they passed Dodd-Frank to fix it. And,
that's why
a lot of good that's
I think the income tax should be abolished. It should just be an indirect consumption tax, the same way we had, the founding fathers did it. Because if you did that, what happens? You eliminate all the lobbying.
Yeah.
People go down to lobby, get lower taxes. If they don't have to do that, then these people aren't going to be making a fortune anymore. And I think there should be no career politicians, period.
Yeah.
Then we get back our government. Then it really is a government of the people.
Yeah. Well, but I think there's the cycle of countries too that we're kind of a victim of here as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we all go through these cycles, and I think we're in our tail end at this point in time, and it's just taxes are going to go up dramatically, and it's going to get really, economically, it's going to get very hard between that, basically 16 and 2020.
Yeah. So what happens in 2020? Because I've heard that from a number of different people that somehow this cycle ends in 2020.
Well, it's our war cycle is kicking up then. That's when the bottom of the economic confidence model comes in. So it looks like we're going to be seeing a lot more economic chaos during that period. The war cycle we have is kicking up, and it's just exploding absolutely everywhere. And you have to understand what causes that. Is I've said many times, people don't fight if they're fat and happy.
Right.
When the economy turns down, then politicians need a scapegoat, because then people are going to get mad at the politicians. So what, Putin will basically say, oh, well, the fall of Russia was a CIA plot. Okay, so now it takes the blame away from him. Yeah, let's go get them. And the same thing with Obama. He's, why is he all over Russia? I mean, and I've asked this question. It's okay, fine. Before Russia was the enemy because they were communists. What is it now? Nobody can answer. Well, they're just Russians. So, okay, but they're capitalists now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're still Russians. All right. I mean, they can't articulate it. But so Putin, is, I would say the only distinction is that Putin is still old world. In other words, the strength of a nation is how much territory it has rather than its economy. So
yeah,
that's the only difference that I would say that exists anymore. But the real joke is that the French should just put up their hands and let Russia take them in, and then say, "Okay, fine, now you pay our pensions."
Yeah.
And he'll go, "I think France is better by itself," and run right back out.
Yeah. Well, they're kind of good at surrendering, the French, throughout history, so might be an option for them. But yeah, so and then you have like a civil unrest measurement that you say is going. Yes, we
measure both.
Yeah,
and both are coming due here at the same time, which is quite alarming because, I mean, ever since we put out this forecast, it has been, I mean, I get so many emails like, "Oh my God, it's everywhere." I was like, "You're right. It's just everywhere." You got the Middle East going crazy. You got Iraq. You have Israel and Gaza going at it again. You've got Ukraine over there.
Yeah.
You got Russia looking at Europe. You've got Swiss, looking rather trying to stop the Europeans from coming in. You have Scotland. Their vote to break away from Britain is coming up in September. Then you have the EU telling Britain basically, either join the euro or get out.
Yeah.
It's just everything everywhere. Even California is talking about breaking up into 7 parts.
Yeah, right. I saw that too. Yeah, it's there's no end of it, and you got the Tea Party, which is indicative of that, and the Occupy movement, and Elizabeth Warren.
Look, it's all. I mean, right here in New Jersey, it's kind of north against south. And you got Staten Island would love to get rid of New York City and break away and get its own.
Yeah.
Everybody's just looking at what they're paying in taxes, and it's not fair, and it's just only going to get worse.
Yeah. You can see the handwriting on the wall, and that's a trend that's definitely strengthening. And like you said, when people are prospering, when they're well fed, they're just not looking at that kind of thing, right? They're just not really concerned.
Not interested,
Yeah.
It's when they lose something, then they want to blame somebody, and that's when war comes.
Yep. So
if you look at all the major wars, they always tend to follow an economic problem.
Oh, for sure. Yep. They always
on one side or the other.
Yeah. It's kind of remarkable that that it's happening at the same time. Yeah, really amazing. So, and precious metals. What are we seeing there? Anything?
Not yet. We're still. Gold still has a risk of making a new low yet, but that I would say should be over with probably by next year at the latest. And then gold should then begin to move up, and this time the major resistance on a inflationary perspective adjusted for that is around 2,300 on gold. You have to exceed that to really make any kind of a new high above 1980.
Right.
So the 1980 was 875. So adjusted for inflation, that's really $2,300. The gold is not broken out yet, and I mean eventually it will, but we're probably looking more into the 17, 18 period before we're going to start seeing gold really, begin to produce. But we're doing a report on gold, which we'll have out hopefully within a week or two.
Oh, great.
And the real issue is not the inflation and the high, the fiat and all that kind of nonsense that people have been talking about. It's the fact that we're moving towards electronic currency.
Really?
And that's going to be one way to get off the grid.
So electronic currency, I'm glad you brought that up. So Bitcoin and all that, but they're just not producing paper currency the way they used to do it, Martin. All the paper currency in circulation here is getting shabby and old and falling apart, and very few people use it.
I was just in London. As of July, all the buses no longer accept currency, only plastic.
Yeah.
In Manchester, they are preparing a test. They took to stores in one street. Nobody takes cash, only plastic. This is where we're going.
Yeah.
All right. They want to eliminate cash for two reasons, but the number one real reason is taxes. If they do that, then that's it. You have no choice. And second reason is you go to electronic currency. How are you going to have a bank run?
You can't. I've been meaning to write something about it. The concept of a bank run today in the United States is really impossible because you can't get any meaningful amount of cash.
No, man, we're going to run down there and say, here, put it on my CD-ROM.
Yeah, put it on my debit card, right? Yeah. So what are you going to do with your debit card? You can't have a meaningful bank run like Jimmy Stewart type bank run. It's impossible. So that's the end of it. And, they don't want you having cash, and only, like 20% of the people carry no cash in their pocket at all. 40% carry less than $50 in their pocket. So cash is becoming like superfluous.
Well, plus you can't wire money anymore to an individual beyond $3,000.
Yeah. So
it has to be to a company. But if it's to an individual, forget it. The hurdles are unbelievable.
I know.
And because we have, employees outside the United States, and just to try and pay them, it's like, well, why are you sending this? So I have to answer these questions every month. It's just nuts.
This is intentional policy here. It's not,
No, that's where we're going. We're going to electronic currency, and just get used to the idea because that's where we're headed.
And then
there's probably bring it in when the economy turns down, and you'll be looking at 16 most likely.
Yeah. So then paper currency, and they don't like paper currency anyway because you can't, once something goes into paper, then it's out of the. Right. It's out of the system altogether. It's off the grid, and you can't leverage it. Right. Well,
yeah. I mean, they're looking at. Paper currency is such a infinitesimal amount of the money supply. It's irrelevant, really. But Canada has been moving to plastic.
Right.
It's no longer actually paper. It's a plastic. Money, and if you crumple it up to be counterfeiters, it will have a maple smell to it.
Yeah,
they actually put scent in the ink.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
so it's very interesting, but they're going to use the process of counterfeiting as a primary issue for that.
Yep. Well, that's obvious in the future. And you think so gold will be the last refuge of somebody wanting out of the system and off the grid, huh?
That will be, I think that's what, we're doing a report on analyzing all of this stuff. And that's going to be the only real reason to have gold. Forget the fiat, forget all the rest of this stuff. Money's always been fiat since the beginning. So, as soon as you take, even when gold was $35, it's fiat.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it was $20.67, and FDR said no. Now it's going to be $35.
Yeah.
Fiat is dictating what a currency is worth. It doesn't matter what the currency is.
Yep, I understand your point.
He could come out and say, all right, gold's $10,000, or it's only $10. As soon as a government can dictate a value to whatever it is, then that's fiat. So the real issue is if you go to electronic money, then how do you pay somebody? And all your, I think, illegal trades or from prostitution and drugs or whatever, either they have nothing or they have to start accepting something different.
Yeah, Bitcoin type alternative currency.
Bitcoin, I think, is not. That's they will be able. The government can shut that down anytime it wants. It's allowing it to happen so that they can monitor how it's developing.
Really? So, well, there'll have to be something: gift cards or McDonald's gift certificates, something, right?
Something along those lines.
Alternative currencies, cigarettes. I don't know, and. You used
some
to
sort of commodity,
right? Got to be something. Yep. Well, anyway, Martin, we got to go, but we find your work. Which is your main site now? ArmstrongEconomics.com. All right, we'll be looking forward to your gold report, and we have a link on Financial Survival Network on the show notes to this interview, and we'll be talking with you again soon. Thanks so much for your time.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.